Hi everyone, Lorne Epstein here. I want to tell you about the recruiting event of the season, Hiring Success Europe, this September in Amsterdam. Smart Recruiters is bringing together practitioners from around the world who will share solutions to your toughest recruiting challenges. For 48 hours, you will be fully immersed in interactive working sessions and meeting your peers and successful practitioners face to face. Your questions will be answered like, how can we hire refugees? What can I do to improve my university recruiting? And where are the best sources of talent? And much, much more. If you want to network and learn from your recruiting heroes from Adidas, Zalando, N26, Delivery Hero, CERN, and Coca-Cola, register now at HiringSuccess.com. Check HiringSuccess.com for this week's special prices. Hi, this is Lorne Epstein, the host of the Lorne Epstein Show, here at the Unleash conference in Las Vegas. And today I have a very special guest joining us on the show, Amy Cappellanti-Wolf. Amy has more than 3 decades of experience leading companies as they transform themselves around HR. Currently, she's the Senior Vice President in CHRO at Symantec. Everyone knows Symantec. As part of Symantec's executive team, she manages their global human resource function. She leads the company's workplace and workforce strategy and planning, real estate and facilities organizations. My goodness, that is like everything.
Yes, I'm busy.
In 2018, last year, she was named one of the top 50 most influential women technology leaders by the National Diversity Council. That's wonderful.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Welcome to the show, Amy.
Thank you for having me today. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I was really excited to get you. So why don't we talk about what you're going to be talking about you have a talk later.
I do. Something that's near and dear to me, which is companies are constantly transforming, whether it's competitive markets, whether it's how they support their shareholders and deliver on their commitments. And during that transformation, there's lots that goes on from an HR perspective. And I think it's a time where HR can play a really critical and pivotal role to help the business succeed, not only through the human capital aspects, but also how we can help with the process, the measurement, and the management of going through a large transformation.
So when you look at a transformation, right? I mean, that's it's easier to say than it is to do. What are some of and maybe we can start at the high level, what are some of the big things you look at before you start digging into something like this?
Great question. Well, first thing is what are you solving for? Is it a cost issue? Is it a growth and top line issue? Is it around where you're located? Are you in the right products? So you have to get clear about what problem you're solving. And then from there, you can begin to identify the work streams you need to put in place to help with that transformation. So in my instances, it's largely been about, hey, we've got to grow faster. And we've got to really cut our operating expenses. And to grow and cut are hard to do together. But you begin to look at ways where maybe you're fat in some areas, or whether you could be more innovative on how we go to market on products with partnerships. So we look at all those types of levers, if you will, and we begin to put a whole process around that. And that starts first with really getting clear about the problem you're solving.
And so when you identified the problem, was it like we have lots of problems? Did you have to pick the top one? Because usually,
yes,
there's more than one problem.
Yeah, there's never a single silver bullet that's going to solve everything. We always wish that if we just did this, we would be so successful. So it's everything from, I'll give you examples, your real estate portfolio. Are you in the right locations? Are you at the right cost synergies related to where you're located and how you're using capacity and space? Do you have the right organizational structure where there's fewer layers so decisions can be made more quickly and adeptly? Do you have the right business intelligence? Are you getting the right data to make good decisions? And is there too much anecdotal perspectives where you're going to drive towards more data-driven perspectives? Are you hiring too many people? Like, do you kind of say, listen, we've got enough resources, let's retool them versus go and hire new? Right. All those types of things you pull given in these transformations.
So when you're looking at those problems, the thing that strikes me is I think when I think about real estate, and honestly, I don't know anything about real estate other than I own a home.
That's all you need to know.
Right. It seems like it's it's an easier decision point, right? Like you can see the cost of this,
yes.
and it's just purely cost. But when you talk about other things that might be like benefits, healthcare, things where some people have a certain tolerance and don't have other tolerance. How do you manage those? Like, did you say, well, this is really just purely cost. We can make these decisions easily, or there are people that are going to be affected by it,
Yeah.
and there's going to be, the consequences, the
Yes.
unintended consequences.
So I think you bring a great point up. So the first thing, in addition to what problem you're solving, is kind of what's the employee experience, because everyone's going to have impact to this.
Yeah.
They're going to have something done to them, or they're going to do something to somebody else. So from an HR perspective, in its simplest form, from an HR perspective, I try to preserve that experience. So I'm pretty fierce from a data perspective around protecting any sort of subsidies from benefits, around. It shows us around retention. It shows us how much we've really driven down some of the costs related to how we're engaging with our brokers. We're self-insured, but we have a lot of work we do globally around how we manage our benefits costs. So I try and use my team's smarts around those types of things to get better benefits that don't impact the employee through better negotiation, better use cases for how we're going to go after that. And there are times where things are going to be impacted. There are times where maybe we have to reduce the space in a real estate footprint, and now the work experience isn't as delightful because the collaboration spaces have gotten really tight, or you're doing a lot of hot desking that people don't always love to go do. But I try to look through these transformations through an employee lens and exactly what am I impacting, and if there is something that's negative with the employee, strong change management, strong communications, and transparency. You got to be real with them about what they're getting, what they're not getting as a result of this, and why it's important for them as employees and for the company.
And did you bring them in at the beginning of the problem statement?
Yes, that's what I'll be talking about today, is how do you get out in front and talk about what we're solving for with real honesty, so people don't think you're doing a hood and wink, but you're being really clear about what you're solving for, and then we involve them in the process, either through how we're going to execute on something or ideation. Like you see FAT, where you sit every day that we may not sit.
Right.
And I always say the people who really know what's happening in the company are your employees and your customers.
Right.
So we try and get all that impact or input from them so we can begin to make smart decisions and not things that look good at 30,000 feet but really don't make sense locally.
Right. And so do you find that the employees respond, like when you say, hey, this is the problem we're solving for, and here's what we intend the consequences to be, do they get an input in that? Like, okay, hey, this is... Let's partner with you on the problem.
Yes. So,
and how do you do that? Like to make it work? Like,
to be practical. Because I think like a lot of times these things sound great. But
exactly.
How does this really work?
Yeah.
So,
I guess that's really what I'm asking.
Yeah, totally. So I'll give you a good example. So as part of our company's evolution, we've done a ton of acquisitions, and I think our integrations have been just okay. But we haven't focused on integrating the different cultures. So we've done some big monolithic acquisitions and some smaller tuck-ins. And we haven't gotten clear about what are our values, how do they relate to our business strategy from a cultural norm, how things get decided, who gets promoted, what does good look like in the company. So what we did is we brought all the employees together, did a cross-company culture survey to really understand what's working in the culture, what's not working in the culture. And a lot of what we got back was, well, I love my manager, but I don't think the people next to me are very collaborative. So my team's great, but those around me aren't great. I'm not certain senior leadership always walks the talk, so I want them to be more transparent with me. And then lastly is we see a lot of opportunity where there's duplication in work that's being done. There's lack of clarity around horizontal views between what an organization does across versus vertically. Mm-hmm. So we took all that feedback and started to initiate what we call workout sessions, which were ways to go fix those problems on both a local and global level. So we did things like we took 5 ERP systems down to 1. And you should never have 5 ERP systems, which is your financial platform. But that was from years of integration and or acquisition and lack of integration. Did a lot of work related to how teams collaborate on a common tool in terms of how they manage documents. We did a lot of work with our business strategy and how that aligns to the culture, and brought employees in to help us really define those two together. Because culture without a business strategy is just words on paper, and the same thing for business strategy and culture. They've got to connect. So examples is if you really want to be customer-centric in everything you do, then you better have tools, processes, communications, escalations that support that the customer comes first, versus it's an afterthought. And then that's how you begin to think about how you reward, how you think about investing in systems, how you communicate with your customers. So we try to marry the culture we want with the business we want to be. And it took a lot of listening, a lot of data, a lot of time spent doing sort of workout sessions. And it started letting people know that they can be a part of the process versus being at the end of the process.
What was the biggest good surprise that you found out while you were doing this process?
Well, I think we knew it, but it reminded us that we probably haven't reinforced it. Everyone loves our mission, right? So
Which is?
we are fighting the bad guys. We're all about making the modern world safe. So we protect your data, whether you're a consumer and you have LifeLock or Norton, or whether you're an enterprise and have our data loss protection, our endpoint protection. We make certain that the bad guys don't get into your data and do harm for you and your business or your family. So it's hard not to love that, because we've all been hacked, whether we know it or not. So it's very personal to all of us. And I came to realize that we don't really talk about that enough, and the innovation that we have and the customer wins and stories that we have. So it made us think differently about how do we step into those types of conversations and make things like all hands meetings less about financial performance. Yep, that's important, and financial alacrity is important to understand how the business runs. But equally important is how are we innovating? How are we beating the bad guys out there? How are we protecting our customers?
Right. What are the great stories?
The great stories.
Because that engages people.
It does.
People don't want to come to work to make more money for a company. They want to come to work to make a difference.
They really do. They want to do interesting work with smart people, be paid fairly, but at the end of the day, solve big problems. And so to me, it was a wake-up call of, wow, we have this precious jewel, and we aren't really leveraging it the way we could.
Right.
In a meaningful way.
And how are you measuring your success?
I got a lot of KPIs, but I think at the end of the day, so I measure my success on net promoter scores. So when we do every quarter pulse surveys, and we do a yearly census. I look at people's desire to promote the company. I look at retention at the high potential, high performer levels. I look at things such as the inclusion index scores that we do. We do a lot related to diversity, equity, inclusion, which people need to feel like they belong. And if they don't feel like they belong, they're not going to stay or be their best. So I measure our success on that. And then I measure my success, obviously, on things as critical as, commitments to delivery on things like hiring, time to fill, cost per hire, more the traditional things. But I'm trying to get more towards sort of engagement and sort of productivity at the end of the day, because that to me is truly fantastic HR versus did you fill a rec on time? Right.
Of course, yeah. So, and speaking of that, I mean, what is Symantec doing in this challenge we have for finding people to work?
Well, it's really challenging, especially in cybersecurity, because it's a hot skill, and it's not something you can curate by getting a degree. Now, more universities are offering cybersecurity courses,
right?
But it's something you learn through curating and working in a security operations center, or working in the government and coming into the private sector. So there is a gap in that kind of talent. So we're doing things like a program called SC3, which is for students that don't have a natural path to a college, underprivileged students, or people that just don't have economic means to be able to attend a university. And we're bringing them into a 6-month program in partnership with NPower, a nonprofit, to give them the skills to be analysts working in security operations centers. And to date, we have graduated a couple of thousand. We've employed some ourselves, and also employed them for our customers and other organizations that would really benefit from having that capability in their organization. And it feels really powerful, because we're one, giving people access that wouldn't have it otherwise, which is all about sponsorship. And two, we're helping seed the community where there's a talent gap in that particular arena of cybersecurity skills.
That's great. Yeah, I mean, there's been a huge push now around getting formerly convicted felons back into the workforce. I don't know if you've heard about this, but the White House and Sherm, Johnny Taylor, and the Koch brothers, they don't have enough workers, so they're looking to this pool. And what's interesting to me about these untapped pools, like I think of the Mississippi Delta or Appalachia, where people don't get a big education, is that there are probably a lot of folks with the aptitude to be computer programmers and to work in cybersecurity, and they're just not. It's just that they're disconnected, right? They're in these bubbles.
Right.
I interviewed a teacher who's working in Tennessee, and if you go to college in Tennessee, you leave Tennessee.
Yeah.
And college is free. So, so what she does is she takes kids who are never going to go to college, and she gets them apprenticeships. She was on a Fulbright, went to England for a year, and learned all about the apprenticeship program. And so she's doing that in Tennessee.
Wow.
But it's a way to people who are just not going to be in the workforce. They would be chronically unemployed or incarcerated, or, hey, we got to get you in. We have to. There's no way to grow the economy without more people.
Yeah, and I completely agree, because I think part of the issue is we keep going back to the same markets for the same talent,
Right.
and we're not opening up our pipeline.
Right.
And there's the conscious or unconscious bias that takes place.
Yeah.
There's everything like from military veterans, which is a huge untapped pool of people who sometimes have a hard time finding new roles. The ones you said, underserved, underprivileged, and I think, frankly, we not just Symantec, but I think all of the employers have a real duty.
Yeah.
And responsibility to go and open up those pipelines. And two, it's going to help from a diversity perspective,
Yeah.
because you're going to bring people with different experiences, different backgrounds, and they're going to bring in innovation in a way that maybe the same people you hire in your image aren't maybe as apt to go do.
Are you doing anything with your hiring managers to kind of get them to see the light? Because that's really where it comes down to, right? I mean, the hiring managers.
Oh, big time, yeah.
You can give them all sorts of resumes.
Yeah, and that's the battle we're having right now. So we are introducing diverse slates, and we're making it mandatory, which means before you can put forth a hire, you have to have shown that you had diversity in your slate.
Nice.
I know. Thank you.
We're doing a little pound fist there.
Thank you. It's hard. One, because it requires my talent acquisition team to open up their pipeline
Right.
of who they go after. Two, it requires us to make the manager wait before they get a boatload of resumes, because initially, give me one as you get it, give me one as you get it,
Exactly.
and they just hire that first one they see. Versus, no, we're going to work a little bit longer to curate a diverse slate for you, and we're going to help you understand what those people bring to the table. And the last thing I'd say is the hard part is everyone wants to hire the 100% candidate.
Right.
They have to have every single skill that's on that CV.
Right.
And that's never the case.
Yeah.
So how do they get comfortable with, hey, the person's smart, they have the aptitude, may not have the experience, but I will build that with them. So maybe hire the 80% person. You're not settling, but you're investing.
So in the management's defense, because I've been in both situations,
Yes.
is that everyone wants to be hired where there's a bit of stretch. People who are high performers, they want to have like a little bit of stretch, 20, 30, 40%, so that it's like something I'm going to grow into.
Right.
But then their manager doesn't want to spend the time getting that person up to speed, doesn't want to spend the time mentoring them or because it's their productivity and they're managed on that productivity. Is there anything being done at that end to say, manager, we understand if we want you to hire diversity and they're not going to be 100%, are we going to give you some slack, give you some room to?
Some tools, yeah. Well, the one thing we're doing, which isn't the panacea, but it's the beginning, is we've reinstituted a manager boot camp that helps just on those types of things. So it's not just the basics of how to have a conversation, how to give feedback, but how to help them get real experiences so they can actually have people accelerate their learning. Because you learn 20% in the classroom or 10% in the classroom.
Or none.
Yeah, or none for some of us. And then 70% is exposure and 20% is experience. So it's being put on the job. So what we're trying to do is create learning cohorts, so you don't have to go through a week-long program or be tied up with an employee teaching them every day, but give them experiences and then use that as a way to come back together and say, what did we learn? How can we accelerate that? So we're giving them some different ways to think about development.
Awesome. Any parting tips for folks listening?
Well, on the DE&I front, the diversity, equity, inclusion, I'd say stay the course. It's hard. Your numbers aren't going to drastically improve day one. It requires a lot of management muscle, a lot of hard conversations, a lot of data, a lot of stick-to-itiveness. And so I would say it's really important. It's no longer a luxury. It's a must-do if you really remain competitive in this global market we find ourselves in.
Amy, thank you so much. How can folks reach out to you if they want to?
I have a LinkedIn profile, and I also am on Twitter.
Okay, cool.
Great.
And so thank you so much, Amy Cappellanti-Wolf with Symantec, and you're listening to the Lorne Epstein Show. We'll be right back with the next episode.
Thank you.
Hi, Lorne Epstein here. I had a great time and learned so much at Unleash Las Vegas. We are looking forward to Unleash World, which is heading to Paris, France, at the Paris Convention Center this October 22nd and 23rd. For more information and to register,